What they never told you about Suleiman the Magnificent, his most mystical and secret side. Suleiman the Magnificent, a name that resonates throughout history as a symbol of greatness, power, and command. Ruler of the vast Ottoman Empire, his figure represents monumental conquests and a golden age of cultural and political splendor. But today, we are not going to talk about his victories on the battlefield or his role as a lawgiver. Today, we will take a journey into his inner self, discovering a side that few know about: Suleiman as a lover of poetry, a spiritual seeker and a mystical soul who spoke through verses under the pseudonym of Muhibbi, the lover. Through his poetry, Suleiman laid bare his soul, revealing emotions, concerns, and an intense connection to love and transcendence. His words, loaded with symbolism and beauty, present us with a man who, despite his immense power, sought answers to the same universal questions we all face. What does it mean to lead while carrying the deepest part of being human? How do we reconcile the weight of the world with the emptiness of the eternal? Prepare to delve into the inner life of one of the most influential men in history. But instead of the Sultan, you'll meet the poet. To understand Suleiman the Magnificent, we must first put him in context. Suleiman, the 10th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, ruled for over 45 years in the 16th century. His title of Magnificent in the West and Kanuni, the lawgiver, in the Islamic world reflects a leader who not only conquered territories, but shaped the world through laws and culture. Yet amidst these great achievements, there was another side to Suleiman, a man who wrote poetry in the silent nights and reflected on his role in the universe. It is here that the duality that defines his legacy begins to emerge. Under the pseudonym Muhibbi, meaning the lover, Suleiman poured out his soul into meaningful verses. His poetry encompassed themes of love, spirituality, longing, and the inevitable passage of time. His poems, written in Ottoman Turkish, were not mere entertainment for someone who already possessed absolute power. They were his refuge, a space where he could express feelings that had no place in palaces or on battlefields. For example, he once wrote, "On this earth, love is sharing pain. The heart burns and consumes like a candle." In these verses we can glimpse the sensitive heart of a man who conceived of love and humanity in universal terms. A key part of understanding Suleiman's mystical inclinations is to examine the influence of Sufism, a mystical branch of Islam that seeks union with the divine through love and spirituality. Many of his poems reflect Sufi ideas, such as detachment from the material, longing for the eternal, and connection to a larger universe. Suleiman was not just an earthly leader. Through his verses, he explored profound spiritual truths. This search for the transcendental is captured in passages like this: "Look into the mirror of your soul, not into the world. For the world is a shadow and the truth is eternal." These words show us that even as an absolute ruler, Suleiman was aware of the fleeting nature of power and wealth. If we talk about poetry and mysticism in Suleiman's life, it is impossible to ignore the presence of Hürrem Sultan, his wife and great love. Hürrem was not only a key political figure, but also the muse behind many of his most passionate verses. Through his poetry, Suleiman revealed a deep love for Hürrem, a love that went beyond the conventions of time. In a society where the wives and concubines of sultans were rarely mentioned in poetry or the historical record, Suleiman broke this norm. He wrote to her, "My companion, my confidant, my only joy in this vast world. Without you, how can my heart even find rest?" These words transcend the era and echo the genuine love he felt for his wife. They show us a vulnerable Suleiman, a man who saw his partner as a beacon in an ocean of responsibilities and challenges. It is important to situate Suleiman within the cultural landscape of his time. The 16th century was a golden age for Ottoman arts, characterized by great advances in architecture, literature, and the visual arts. As a patron, Suleiman promoted the creation of beautiful mosques, extensive libraries, and abundant poetry. In this flourishing artistic environment, poetry played a central role. In the Ottoman world, rulers were not only political leaders, but also intellectuals who actively participated in cultural life. Suleiman was no exception. Through his work, Suleiman contributed to the enrichment of the poetic repertoire of his time. His poems not only contained his personal essence, but also aligned with traditional symbols of Ottoman poetry, such as the use of images of the garden, the rose, and the nightingale, representations of divine and earthly love. Although Suleiman will be remembered primarily as one of the Ottoman Empire's most formidable leaders, his poetry and mysticism add a unique dimension to his legacy. The survival of his poems to this day allows us to see the man behind the crown, a figure who often struggled with his own place in the universe. Today, we can learn from Suleiman that even in positions of power, vulnerability and introspection are not signs of weakness, but of humanity. Through his verses, he shares with us universal truths that transcend time. The story of Suleiman the Magnificent reminds us of the importance of duality in human life. He was an unwavering leader in the face of armies, but also a sensitive heart who cried through verses. A patron of art who saw beauty, while reflecting on the transience of life. His example invites us to find balance between the mundane and the transcendental, between our external responsibilities and our internal longings. His poetry teaches us that, beyond power or glory, the connection with oneself and with spirituality is what defines us as human beings. As Suleiman once wrote, "All power on this earth will disappear, but what is eternal is the love we carry within." A reminder that, at the end of the day, we are all part of the same mystery. A mystery that not even a sultan can fully unravel, but which, through poetry, we can try to understand.